My daughter called crying at midnight. My husband's mother broke her jaw for disrespect. What happened next tore our family apart forever. You broke my daughter's jaw. I gripped the hospital bed rail until my knuckles turned white, staring at the woman who'd raised the man I married. Over a disagreement about Thanksgiving dinner. She was disrespectful. Teresa's voice rang through the hospital room without a trace of remorse. In my house, daughters-in-law learn their place. Your house? My voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. That's my daughter lying there with her face wired shut. Hi, I'm Gloria. Today I'm going to tell you the story of how my mother-in-law nearly destroyed my daughter's life and how karma came for her in ways none of us could have predicted. But before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe to hear more stories like this. Let me take you back to when this nightmare began. My daughter Rachel had been married to my son Kevin for 4 years. They seemed happy enough, though I'd always had concerns about his grandmother Teresa. She ran their household like a boot camp. Even though Rachel and Kevin had their own apartment in her duplex, Teresa was one of those women who believed respect meant complete obedience. At 68, she still expected everyone to bow when she entered a room. Her husband, William, barely spoke anymore. 42 years of marriage had worn him down to a shell, who just nodded and retreated to his garage workshop. The first warning sign came 8 months ago during Sunday brunch. Rachel had suggested they try a new recipe for the biscuits and gravy, something she'd found on Pinterest. "We've made biscuits the same way for 45 years, Teresa said, her tone cold enough to freeze fire. I just thought it might be fun to experiment, Rachel offered gently. Teresa's face hardened. When you've been cooking as long as I have, then you can make suggestions. Until then, you follow the rules in my kitchen. I watched Kevin just continue eating his eggs, not even looking up when his grandmother humiliated his wife. That should have been my first clue. Rachel started calling me more often after that incident. Always when Kevin was at the construction site. Mom, I don't know what to do, she'd say, voice trembling. Everything I do is wrong. The way I arrange the living room furniture, how I organize the pantry, even how I say good morning to her. Have you talked to Kevin about it? He says I'm being too sensitive. That's just how Grandma Teresa is. She means well. The calls became more frequent and more disturbing. Teresa had taken Rachel's apartment key because family doesn't need privacy from family. She'd walk into their home whenever she pleased, criticizing everything from Rachel's career as a dental hygienist to her choice of bed sheets. She threw away my herb garden, Rachel told me one afternoon, voice breaking, said the basil was attracting mosquitoes. They were in pots on the balcony. Then came the financial manipulation. Teresa convinced Kevin that Rachel should deposit her paychecks into a joint household account for better family budgeting. Of course, Teresa controlled that account. I had to ask her for money to buy feminine products, Mom, Rachel whispered over the phone. She interrogated me about why I needed a particular brand instead of the generic store version. Rachel, sweetheart, this isn't healthy. You need to establish boundaries. And go where? Kevin won't stand up to her. He says I'm making mountains out of molehills. 4 months ago, everything intensified. Rachel had gotten a promotion at the dental practice, office manager, with a significant raise. She was glowing with pride when she called me after receiving the news. That's my girl, I said, tears of joy in my eyes. We need to celebrate this properly. Grandma Teresa says career women make terrible wives. Rachel's voice went flat. She wants me to quit and focus on giving Kevin children. Absolutely not. You worked incredibly hard for this position. But Teresa's sabotage campaign began immediately. She started scheduling mandatory family gatherings during Rachel's work hours. Doctor appointments for Kevin that somehow only Rachel could accompany him to, household emergencies that required Rachel's immediate presence. Your daughter-in-law missed another family dinner, Teresa would announce to anyone within earshot. Too absorbed in her little job to care about family values. Rachel's boss, Dr. Anderson, was understanding initially, but understanding has its limits. After the sixth emergency in 3 weeks, Rachel received a formal written warning. "I might lose my job, Mom," she sobbed over the phone. "Come stay with me for a while," I urged. "Just until things settle." "I can't abandon Kevin. I love him, Mom." The catastrophic breaking point came 5 weeks ago. Rachel had been selected to present at a major dental conference in Austin, Texas, a massive career opportunity. Teresa scheduled her 75th birthday celebration for the exact same weekend. "I've been planning this for months," Teresa announced at Sunday lunch, her eyes challenging Rachel. "The entire family will attend." "But I told you about the Austin conference," Rachel said quietly, carefully. "Some work obligation is more important than family?" Teresa's voice rose. "That's disrespectful." "It's not just some obligation. This is a significant professional achievement." Teresa slammed her coffee mug on the table. "That's exactly what you are, disrespectful and ungrateful after everything this family has provided for you." Rachel looked desperately at Kevin, who was studying his plate like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Kevin, please. You understand how important this is to my career." "Grandma's been planning this celebration for months, Rach," he mumbled without meeting her eyes. "I'll be presenting to 400 dental professionals. This could transform my entire career trajectory." "Family comes first," Teresa stated with finality. "If you go to that conference, don't bother returning to my property." "It's our apartment," Rachel's voice shook. "We pay rent." "In my duplex," Teresa stood, pointing toward the door. "You want to act like you're independent? Then be independent somewhere else." Rachel stood up too, finally finding her courage. "You know what? Fine. I'll attend the conference. And when I return, Kevin and I are finding our own place far away from here." "Kevin isn't going anywhere," Teresa said coldly, confidently. "He's my grandson. That bond is eternal." Rachel looked at Kevin one final time. He wouldn't meet her eyes, wouldn't defend her, wouldn't choose his wife over his grandmother's tyranny. Rachel went to the Austin conference. Absolutely crushed it too. Called me from her hotel room, sounding happier than she had in months. "Mom, they offered me a regional coordinator position, 38% raise. I'd oversee 5 dental practices." "That's incredible, sweetheart." My heart swelled with pride. "I'm so proud of you. I can afford my own apartment now, a nice one. If Kevin wants to stay trapped with his grandmother, that's his decision to make." She flew back Thursday evening. Kevin wasn't home when she arrived at their apartment. Teresa was waiting. "I told you not to come back," Teresa said, physically blocking the doorway. "I live here. I pay rent every month." "Not anymore. I've packed your belongings. They're in boxes by the dumpster." "You can't do that. This is illegal. Where's Kevin?" "He's made his choice. A good grandson always chooses his grandmother. Blood is thicker than marriage vows." Rachel tried to push past her, keys in hand. That's when Teresa completely snapped. She grabbed Rachel's hair, yanking her backward with shocking violence. Rachel stumbled, tried to regain her balance, but Teresa was already swinging with decades of suppressed rage. The first hit caught Rachel in the temple. She went down hard, her face smashing against the wooden entry table. Teresa didn't stop. She kicked Rachel in the ribs repeatedly, screaming about respect and knowing your proper place in the family hierarchy. William heard the violent commotion from his garage workshop downstairs. By the time he pulled Teresa off, Rachel was unconscious, blood pooling beneath her face on the hardwood floor. The midnight call came while I was watching late-night television. Unknown number. "Mrs. Gloria, this is St. Luke's Hospital Emergency Department. Your daughter Rachel was brought in by ambulance." I don't remember the drive to the hospital, just suddenly being there, running through the automatic emergency room doors in my pajamas. The doctor intercepted me in the corridor. "She's stable," he said quickly, reading my panic. "But there are significant injuries that required immediate intervention." "What kind of injuries?" "Broken jaw in 2 places, 4 cracked ribs, severe concussion, facial lacerations. Someone beat her severely. The police have been notified as protocol requires. Where is she? I need to see my daughter right now. He led me to a room where Rachel lay impossibly still. Her face was swollen beyond recognition, mottled with deep purple bruises. Her jaw was wired completely shut, metal brackets visible through her swollen lips. A nurse was carefully adjusting her IV medications. Oh my God, Rachel. I collapsed into the chair beside her bed, taking her hand gently. Her eyes fluttered open. She couldn't speak through the wired jaw, but tears rolled down her bruised cheeks, cutting paths through the dried blood. I held her hand carefully, rage building like a volcano in my chest. Who did this to you, baby? She pointed weakly toward her phone on the bedside table. I scrolled through until I found a text message from William that made my blood freeze. Teresa hurt Rachel badly. At St. Luke's Hospital. Please come immediately. The door burst open violently. Teresa strode in like she owned the entire hospital, Kevin trailing behind her like a frightened puppy. You broke my daughter's jaw? I gripped the hospital bed rail until my knuckles turned bone white. Over a disagreement about Thanksgiving dinner and a career opportunity? She was disrespectful. Teresa's voice rang through the hospital room without remorse. In my house, daughters-in-law learn their place or face consequences. Your house? My voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. That's my daughter lying there with her face wired shut. Look at what you did to her. She attacked me first, Teresa lied smoothly, easily. I was defending myself from her aggression. Really? I pulled out my phone, hands shaking with rage. Because William texted saying Teresa hurt Rachel badly. That doesn't sound like self-defense to me. Teresa's face went pale beneath her makeup. William doesn't understand what he witnessed. He's senile. I know exactly what I saw, William said from the doorway. None of us had heard him enter. I saw you beat that innocent girl unconscious because she finally stood up to your tyranny. William! Teresa's voice went shrill, panicked. How dare you betray me like this? I'm finished, William said quietly but firmly. 42 years I've watched you bully and terrorize everyone around you. But this? Beating a defenseless young woman? I'm done enabling your abuse. Kevin finally spoke up, his voice pathetic. Rachel, baby, I'm so sorry. Grandma said you'd left me, that you'd… Rachel made an angry sound through her wired jaw, pointing forcefully at him to leave immediately. Her eyes blazed with betrayal and rage. She can't talk, you coward, I said harshly. Your grandmother broke her jaw and you weren't even there to protect your own wife. I didn't know Grandma would what? Beat your wife unconscious? What exactly did you think would happen when you chose your grandmother over your marriage vows? A police officer appeared in the doorway, notebook in hand. I'm looking for Rachel Henderson. We received a report of a serious assault. That's my daughter, I said immediately. We need to file charges right now. Patricia immediately went on the offensive, her voice rising. She attacked me first. I want to press charges against her for assault. The officer looked at Rachel's devastating condition, face wired shut, covered in bruises, hooked to IV medications, then at Teresa, who didn't have a single scratch on her perfectly manicured appearance. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step outside into the corridor immediately. What followed was absolutely beautiful to witness. William gave his statement first, clear and devastatingly detailed. The neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Chen, had heard everything and came forward with crucial evidence. She'd been recording on her phone through her door's peephole when she heard the violent screaming. She'd actually been documenting Teresa's abusive behavior for months, worried about Rachel's safety. The video was brutal but crystal clear. Teresa attacking Rachel unprovoked, beating her while she was defenseless on the ground. Rachel never raised a hand in defense, just tried to protect her face. They arrested Teresa right there in the hospital corridor. She screamed about respect and ungrateful daughters-in-law all the way to the police car. Kevin tried to follow them. Grandma, I'll call our family lawyer immediately. Let her rot in jail, I said coldly. Your wife is lying here with her face reconstructed, and you're worried about the person who did this? She's my grandmother. And Rachel's your wife. Or did you forget those vows when you let your grandmother control every aspect of your life? He left without seeing Rachel again. She was infinitely better off without him. The following days became a blur of police statements, medical procedures, and legal consultations. Rachel couldn't eat solid food, could barely open her mouth to drink protein shakes through a straw, but she was absolutely determined to press full charges. William surprised everyone by filing for divorce the very day after Teresa's arrest. 42 years is enough, he told me over coffee at the hospital cafeteria. I should have protected Rachel, should have stood up decades ago. He became our star witness. Decades of Teresa's psychological and emotional abuse documented meticulously in his private journals. He'd been writing it all down for years, preparing for the day he'd finally find the courage to leave. Teresa made bail, of course. Her expensive lawyer posted it immediately. She showed up at my house 2 nights later, pounding on my door and demanding to see Rachel. She's not here, Teresa. Leave my property. I know she's hiding in there. This is all a terrible misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? I pulled out my phone. You broke her jaw in 2 places. That's not a misunderstanding. She provoked me after everything I've done for her, everything I've sacrificed. You're violating the restraining order right now. I'm calling the police. She fled, but not before screaming, "This isn't over, Gloria. You haven't won." She was right about that, just not in the way she imagined. See, Teresa had built her entire life on control and fear. Take those away, and everything crumbles like a house of cards. Kevin moved back in with Teresa after Rachel filed for divorce from her hospital bed, papers signed with her left hand while her right was still in a cast. But living with Teresa without Rachel as a buffer was completely different. "She's impossible, Mom," he called me after just 1 week. "Nothing I do is right. She criticizes absolutely everything about me." "Sounds remarkably familiar," I said, hanging up without sympathy. Teresa's business? She ran a small event planning company. It started hemorrhaging clients within days. Turns out people don't want someone who viciously beats their daughter-in-law planning their weddings and corporate events. The arrest was public record. The local newspaper picked up the story. Local event planner arrested for brutal assault. Her country club friends distanced themselves overnight. The church committee quietly asked her to step down. One by one, her carefully constructed social circles abandoned her completely. Kevin lasted 4 weeks before he couldn't take it anymore. He'd lost his wife. His home had become a war zone, and his grandmother's toxic reputation was destroying his career through association. His colleagues whispered about him being the assault lady's grandson. His biggest client, a construction firm, canceled their contract to avoid any negative publicity or association. He moved out in the middle of the night, packing his truck while Teresa slept. "Don't you dare abandon me," Teresa screamed from the window when she woke to find his vehicle loaded. "After everything I've sacrificed for this family." But he was done. Without Rachel to abuse and Kevin to control, Teresa turned her rage on William during one of their contentious divorce hearings. "You spineless coward! 42 years I wasted on you!" She lunged at him right there in the courthouse, screaming obscenities. Security officers had to physically restrain her. Another arrest, another bail hearing, another damaging news story. The trial was scheduled for 8 months out. Teresa hired the most expensive defense attorney she could afford, but the evidence was absolutely overwhelming. The neighbor's video, the detailed medical records, multiple credible witnesses. Even her lawyer looked defeated during preliminary hearings. Rachel healed slowly, painfully. Her jaw was unwired after 10 excruciating weeks, but eating remained difficult for months. She moved in with me temporarily, throwing herself into intensive physical therapy and her new regional coordinator position, which her employer held open despite everything. Teresa's life continued its spectacular downward spiral. The divorce settlement cut her assets in half. The mounting legal fees drained her retirement savings. She had to sell the duplex she'd lorded over everyone to pay for everything. The same house where she'd ruled like a tyrant for decades. Kevin tried to reconcile with Rachel once. Showed up at my door with grocery store flowers and pathetic apologies. "I know I failed you completely," he said when Rachel reluctantly agreed to see him in my living room. "I should have protected you from her." "Yes," Rachel said simply, her voice still slightly distorted from the jaw injury. "You should have. Can we try again? I'll do better this time, I promise." "With what apartment? What money? You let your grandmother systematically ruin our life because you couldn't say no to her demands." "I've changed because you had to, not because you wanted to." "Goodbye, Kevin." The trial came faster than expected due to a scheduling change. Teresa's lawyer tried every defense strategy imaginable: temporary insanity, provocation, even claiming Rachel had been emotionally abusive toward Teresa for years. Nothing stuck with the jury. Rachel testified with quiet, powerful dignity. She described years of escalating control and psychological abuse that culminated in the violent physical attack. William's testimony was absolutely devastating. 4 decades of watching Teresa systematically destroy everyone around her. The neighbor's video was the final nail in the coffin. The jury watched Teresa beat an unconscious woman while screaming about teaching her place. They deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty: assault in the second degree, aggravated harassment, criminal trespassing. Teresa's face when they read the verdict was something I'll never forget. Complete shock, like she'd never once considered that consequences could actually apply to her. "This is a mistake," she screamed as they led her away in handcuffs. "She deserved everything she got. They all deserved it." The judge sentenced her to 6 years in state prison. With good behavior, she might get out in 4. But her life as she knew it was completely over. William sent me a heartfelt letter last month. He'd moved to Arizona, started completely over at 70 years old. "Should have done this 40 years ago," he wrote in shaky handwriting. "Please tell Rachel I'm sorry I didn't protect her sooner. She deserved better from all of us." Kevin disappeared entirely from our lives. Last I heard through mutual acquaintances, he was living with his aunt in Colorado, working at a hardware store. No more management position, no more luxury truck his grandmother had co-signed for, just consequences. Rachel, she's absolutely thriving now. The regional coordinator position came with relocation to Portland, Oregon. She's in weekly therapy, working through the trauma, but she's stronger and more confident than I've ever seen her. "You know what the ironic thing is, Mom?" she said during our last dinner before her big move. "Teresa always said I'd be nothing without her family name and connections. Turns out I'm everything without them." She was absolutely right. Teresa had spent so long controlling everyone through fear and manipulation that she never built anything genuine or real. When the fear was gone, so was everything else. Her house, her business, her family, her freedom, all destroyed by her own hands. You can't build a life on fear and control. Eventually, someone finds the courage to stand up. Sometimes it takes a broken jaw and a hospital bed, but the tower of tyranny always falls. Teresa wanted respect, but never learned the fundamental difference between respect and fear. Now she's learning that difference in a 6x8 cell, while everyone she tried to control is finally, beautifully free. The ripple effects of Teresa's downfall continued long after the trial concluded. Her event planning business was purchased by Carmen, a former employee who'd endured years of Teresa's abuse. Carmen renamed it Fresh Start Events and made it her mission to hire women escaping domestic situations, giving them a second chance. Kevin tried to rebuild his life, but Teresa's notorious reputation followed him everywhere like a dark shadow. He eventually changed his legal name and moved across the country, trying desperately to escape the consequences of his compliance and cowardice. William remarried last spring. found a lovely widow named Patricia at his pottery class in Arizona. 42 years of enforced silence, he told me at his intimate wedding ceremony. Patricia makes me want to speak again, to laugh again. Rachel flew in for the ceremony, and seeing William genuinely happy was better than any revenge we could have planned. The duplex Teresa was so proud of. It's a nonprofit community center now. I drive by sometimes and see children playing in the yard where she once ruled with an iron fist. There's something beautifully poetic about that. A place of fear becoming one of joy and community. Teresa gets out in 2 years with good behavior, but she has absolutely nothing to come back to. No home, no business, no family, no reputation. She wanted so desperately to be feared that she never learned how to be loved. Now she has neither. The state assigned her to a halfway house 3 counties away. Even strangers know her story now, thanks to the media coverage. Rachel's jaw healed completely. But she still has a faint scar on her chin. She could have had plastic surgery to remove it, but she deliberately chose to keep it. "It's my reminder, Mom," she told me, "that I survived, that I'm stronger than what she did to me." Last week, she called with exciting news. "Mom, I met someone. His name's Christopher." "Tell me about him." "He's genuinely kind. Actually kind. When I told him about Teresa, about everything that happened, he didn't say, 'I'll protect you,' or 'that'll never happen again.' He just said, 'Thank you for trusting me with your story.'" Sounds like a good man. He is. And Mom? His mother lives in Seattle. We see her twice a year. She sends homemade cookies and actually respects boundaries. Can you imagine that? I laughed, tears in my eyes. A mother-in-law who understands what love actually looks like. What a revolutionary concept. Normal family dynamics. It's amazing. That's my daughter. Absolutely unbreakable. So let me ask you, have you ever watched someone completely destroy their own life by trying to control everyone else's? Sometimes the best revenge isn't anything you actively do. It's just stepping back and letting their own poison consume them from within. What's your story?